right, I'm joined by my groggy colleagues, Alex Cyr and Katelyn Tocci. Guys, we just took in the 2024 Berlin Marathon, and as promised, we are delivering on our instant reaction podcast. It's going to be quick and dirty. We're going to try to get in and out in 20 to 30 minutes. I've put together 3 different sort of packages for us to discuss here. We're going to do big deal, little deal, or no deal at all. A little game, a little sports talk radio game, followed by a few burning questions in the aftermath of watching this Berlin Marathon, and then Katelyn's favorite. We're going to do one winner and one loser from the Berlin Marathon. All right. First things first. The races themselves. Just very quickly, we'll do a quick snapshot here.
Okay.
I think the men's race, we can say, overall more exciting than the women's race.
Totally.
Although the women's performance perhaps slightly more impressive than the men's performance. We had Ethiopia kind of dominating here. So Milkesa Mengesha of Ethiopia won the men's race in 2:03:17, and pre-race favorite on the women's side, Tadese Takele, also of Ethiopia, sort of ran away with this race in 2:16:42. We'll get into her performance right away, guys. Let's do big deal, little deal, no deal. Let's start with Tadese Takele's performance. To tee this up for everyone listening, Tadese Takele is sort of a newcomer to the marathon in the last year or so. This is her 3rd race. She is the fastest debutant ever. She ran Dubai in 2:16 at the beginning of this year. Followed that one up with a little jog in London where she finished 6th in around 2:20. Sort of okay performance for her at her first World Marathon Major. Then she pivots to Berlin this fall. The slate is cleared for her. All the Olympic top dogs had spent their effort for this fall in Paris. So she got to run away with Berlin, and that she did. And she ran 2:16:42, which puts her with now 2 races out of 3 in the top, 15 all time. Big deal, little deal, no deal. This performance.
To me, it was a big deal. To me, it was absolutely a big deal. I think that because she dominated the race so well, I mean, it's always a big deal to be out there and just kill it. I mean, she had a little company maybe for the first half of the race and she basically took the race by herself. So to me, it was a big deal, totally dominating, no competition. It just shows her talent, her hard work, her perseverance. She just killed it.
I give it a little deal.
Okay.
I think if Katelyn were around like 10 years ago, it would be a massive deal. She's got all the makeup to be the next one. Okay. She's coming from the track. Like, people don't realize this. She was a track runner until 2021. She's super fresh in the marathon, and she seems to be getting a little bit better by the race. I mean, 2:16 twice. The reason it's a little deal, it's no fault of her own, is the women's marathon has become so competitive. Like, someone winning Berlin in 2:16, we've learned, is like not that big a deal. So I think like it's some type of a deal, because I'm excited to see what she can do the next couple years.
Right.
She obviously was the best runner on the start line, but I mean, you think of what we saw last year with Asefa going, 2:11. It's a smaller deal than that, but that still makes me excited to see what Katelyn can do.
I'm somewhere between both of you here.
Okay.
I think
Are you introducing the medium deal?
Do we have a medium deal?
We've got a medium deal on our hands here.
Okay.
And because you're both right. I'm like the careful.
Boring.
You're both right.
Pick a side, Michael.
I think it gets upgraded to big deal if, in retrospect, in a year or two, if we look back on this as like the jumping off point for her becoming a generational star, along with her training partner and Ethiopian teammate and Adidas teammate, and and fellow Tigist. We could have like the Tigist duo here, where we see both of them begin to dominate the World Marathon Majors over the next 2, 3, 4 years. And she pushes her time down closer to that world record that Tigist Assefa has run. I think that'd be really exciting. And that would upgrade this performance to, in retrospect, being kind of like a launching off point and a big deal. But for now, I'm going to put it into I'm breaking my own game's rules here. I'm going medium deal here. Okay. So obviously a great performance. Very tough to lead from the front like that. As you said, Katelyn, she had some company for a bit, but then the company faded away and she had to do it all alone. And she ran a relatively even race, which is an indicator that there might be a little bit more there, a little more left there in terms of performance. So, I mean, really cool to see somebody kind of emerging. I think maybe needed right now. We can get into that later. Okay, so let's pivot to the men's race really quickly here. Big deal, little deal, no deal. The men's race outcome was a more exciting race overall in terms of like a spectacle, a viewing experience, a sports entertainment, because there was a load of dudes in the first half together, and they started to kind of fade away. But you still had a small pack going into the last kilometers of the race. And as I said before, Mengesha pulls it off. He beats my pre-race pick, Cybrian Kotut of Kenya, by just 5 seconds in the end. And then Haymanot Alew of Ethiopia takes third place in 2:03:31, so not far behind as well. Okay, so exciting race. But 2:03 in 2024. I can't believe I'm saying this. 2:03 in 2024. Alex, big deal, little deal, no deal, the men's side.
Oh God, I'm actually gonna say no deal at all. And I feel like an asshole saying this because the race was exciting.
Alex.
No, but you expect to see the very best go head to head in Berlin, right? It's just a couple years ago that we were looking at Kipchoge versus Kenny, right? A 2:03 finish. A race that featured like maybe runner number 10, 11, 12 in the world, roughly, that didn't have a Kipchoge, a Tamarat, Tola, a Cisse Lema, ends up being, I feel awful saying that. It's like a sideshow. It was a super interesting sideshow to watch, but a sideshow nonetheless. And it left us thinking, what would have Tola run if he were there? Would he have taken the race? Would Lema have done the same thing as in Boston and gone even quicker? What if Kibiwott Candy hung on to the crazy pace that he put in? I'll tell you, midway through the race, I thought we were seeing something amazing, but near the end, I was like, this is not a Berlin that we'll remember.
We saw positive splits, right? For the men's race. They just kept getting slower and slower and slower as it went on. I'm going to say little deal. I'm going to go, it wasn't a big deal, but it was a little deal. And the reason why it was a little deal to me is because it was a big deal to those top four because they all PR'd. And so I'm pretty.
The glass is half full with Kate. Amazing. How do you do? You do it every time.
No, but
relentlessly positive.
It's because Katelyn's been up for 5 hours. She's been up for a little bit longer, and she's just hit her positive. Let me finish my coffee, okay?
Okay,
We're going to be a little bit more positive.
Maybe we'll get an attitude. No, I'm just kidding. A little bit a better lookout. No, but no, that's the reason why I did say a little deal, because I feel like it is a big deal for them. I mean, you PR, it's a big deal. So there's a lot of PRs for the top four.
I didn't intend for this game to be like me picking between you two at the end here, but in this case, I'm siding with Alex. I think it's no deal at all. I think this race just kind of gets lost in the shuffle, and like we look back and go over like the last 10 years of performances at World Marathon Majors, and I think this one's going to be a real a down point, which I can't believe I'm saying again with a 2:03 performance. I remember the Dennis Kimetto setting the world record in Berlin about 10 years ago. And I think he got under 204 was at that time. I believe he ran in the 203s. It might have been
when he set the world record. I think it was 202 high even.
Okay, so 202 high. I just remember thinking to myself, like, that's crazy. This is pre-super shoes
Right.
and all of that. But now it's like, 203. There's 3 guys that finish in 203, whatever, but that's just the state of the game, right? And I think that's a good thing overall. I think that we're now kind of in this, we're trending towards what happens next year. I'm starting to feel like, and maybe this is answering a burning question here, but I'm starting to feel like we're this season of World Marathon Majors, particularly this race in Chicago, which are the 2 fast ones, are kind of like a freebie for all of these men and women who did not qualify for the Olympics, but are up and coming and training with the world's best to see if they can run close to the world record times. And it's like a free shot. Whereas next year, you're going to get all the killers back, and it's going to be kind of big deal racing for everybody across the board in 2025. And also, world championships looming and that sort of thing. So I would say no deal at all, just because I don't think that there's a huge standout performance. They split the first half in 201 high pace. So that was close to Eliud Kipchoge's course record. That would have been a big deal. If you would have seen, like a 201 something, that would have been a very big deal. And they just faded away. And there was sort of game playing and tactical racing. And also, I think it was probably just a little too fast a pace for these guys. Okay, so big deal, little deal, no deal at all. Adidas dominating the results. If you watched the live feed, just a whole bunch of lavender vests, as the British like to call it, lavender singlets, lavender shorts, and white shoes. The Pro Evo, I'm guessing the second edition of the Pro Evo, their super duper shoe, the hyper shoe, as Alex and I like to refer to it. Big deal, little deal, no deal at all that Adidas totally dominated this race overall.
I'll call it a big deal. So I'm bringing out the big deal for this one. The reason is, I think, so even after like testing out a bunch of shoes and like making shoe videos, I can't tell when looking at someone's feet if this is a Pro Evo 1 or Pro Evo 2. If the 2 exists, we don't know what it looks like. Someone suggested to us that it might look the exact same just to throw people off. And the reason I think that it's a big deal if some runners have the 2 or the second version on their feet is because I think every other brand has shown their cards at this point. Like Nike runners wear the Alphafly 3, or some wear the Vaporfly. Asics runners wear the Metaspeed Paris. Like the shoe launches, as far as we know, are done for the year. The only potential question mark comes from Adidas. They already had the Pro Evo 1, which not arguably was already ahead of all the other shoes in the game. And now they might have something better. I thought the era of like one brand dominating the shoe game was done after everyone caught up to Nike. I wonder if we're going to see a second version of that as other brands try to catch up to Adidas. And the fact that today they dominated so much could just mean that there were a lot of Ethiopians in the race, and it was some of the best Ethiopians, and most pro Ethiopian runners are sponsored by Adidas. It could be that. That could be the confound, but also could be that there's a new hyper shoe in the game. And if that's the case, it's a big deal. And even the speculation of it, I call it a big deal.
Okay. Alex, I knew you were going to come up with something because you have all the inside info and you know all about the shoes. And it's
something has to be a big deal.
Yeah, no, and because I was going to say no deal, because it just didn't seem like any new news for me, because it was just like, didn't Adidas dominate in what we were recently seeing in previous races of the Olympics? And so I thought, okay, well, I guess I just wasn't surprised. I was like, okay, I was here to see them. I knew that they were going to be the headlining shoe brand. We just saw them there and I was like, oh, okay, I actually didn't even really think about it until you guys mentioned it. So to me, I guess it just wasn't as big as a deal, but I didn't know that the shoe may be in the works. So kind of changed.
So no deal.
Deal.
I'm going to round this one out by going little deal.
Okay.
And I think it's a little deal because Again, I see both your perspectives, and you're both right in your own
Oh
way.
my God.
I love it. I love it.
It's been a weekend of parenting and compromise. So it's always a bit of a deal when a shoe brand puts up a lot of performers on the podium at a World Marathon Major. And the reason why is whether or not this is fair, at the end of the year, you're just going to see various shoe Instagrams and whatever floating around and I'm sure we'll do a story on it too, which is like, here's the kind of the tally of the World Marathon Majors and the Olympics of which shoes did well, right? Mm-hmm. And we're going to see Adidas dominating across the board. Now, Alex, two really important points that you put out there. One, Berlin is an Adidas event, just like Chicago is a Nike event. So you're going to see more Adidas runners in the elite field at the start line. They're stacking their field. It's their home turf. It's also in Germany. Adidas is a German company, so it makes perfect sense. And the second point to that, which is sort of like compounding that, is that it is true that it seems like the vast majority of Ethiopian runners are Adidas runners as well, particularly their best runners. So this was an Adidas event where they made sure a lot of their runners that wanted to run, that did not run the Olympics, were at this event. And then also, of course, a big Ethiopian contingent at this year's race as well. But I got to say, even though that's the case, and that's sort of stacking the field a little bit, and maybe it's an unfair advantage Adidas has, nevertheless, like the Pro Evo 1, 2, whatever it is a scintillating, fascinating, alluring shoe. It's a shoe that if like money were not an object, and like you're about to run a marathon and you walk into some sort of strange like Pepsi taste challenge for shoes in 2024, and they've got like all the shoes lined up, and they're like, you got to choose a shoe that you're gonna run in for the next 26.2 miles. I think you got to go with the Adidas shoe. So I think it's a little deal. Okay. A little deal trending towards big deal as I'm talking about it. Okay, last one for this round. Big deal, little deal, no deal at all. Lack of big names in the results at the 2024 Berlin Marathon. Katelyn.
Big deal. Very big deal. I feel like the marathon, we covered it very well, of course. Pat on the back to us, Marathon Handbook. But I feel as though the marathon didn't get the coverage that it kind of should get and that is merited to it. I feel like when I was reading around and looking for news, I don't feel like it was as big as, when we were looking into or getting ready for the London Marathon or getting ready. I felt like there was a lot more excitement, a lot more news. And so I feel like maybe if it had something to do with, the Olympics just passed and there was a big deal and we lost a lot of maybe top tier athletes as we're discussing with the, second tier times that we saw at this marathon. I think that it was a big deal because maybe it pulled just a little bit of attention away. And something that I will get into much later, even I, for example, in Central America did not have coverage, like a broadcast for the marathon. So, that to me, it was a very big deal. And I don't know if that perhaps some of the athletes not headlining the marathon took away or affected any of these pieces. But yeah, I think it was a big deal.
I'm going to disagree again and go no deal.
Love it.
At all.
Okay.
And I thought about it a little bit. I think it's easy to fall into that narrative of like, wow, there's no Kipchoge. There's no Asefa. There's no Bekele. Oh my God. But then I thought about how important the Olympics are in this story, right? Not only is Berlin of this year an Olympic year, but it's the first major after the Olympics. I can see people doubling up and, some of the top athletes not having a great race at the Olympics saying, all right, I'm going to try again in the fall. Why not do New York or Chicago and give themselves another couple of weeks? That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I tested my theory. I went back to 2021 to see what the Berlin results are. Anyone remember who won the Berlin Marathon in 2021?
Michael.
Exactly.
Damn you, Cyr. You got me.
The men's race was won in a 2:05 by Guy Adola, Ethiopia. the women's race by Gautam Gebrselassie, the 220. These times were not spectacular for the time. They're not spectacular now. And I think it's just a product of the schedule and the time. So I'm not fretting about it. Some organizers, Berlin might be nervous. I'm saying just wasn't your year. It'll be better next year.
That's positive. That's a good outlook, though, Alex. Yeah, very.
I had my coffee.
Oh, yeah. Okay. You perked up.
It's like the coup de grace there. You're just like, you brought in the stats from 21. I didn't even think to do that.
That was awesome.
Very clever.
Good,
Very
Alex.
Clever. I still think, I mean, that's compelling. That's compelling evidence that you presented there, but I still think it's a big deal. And the reason why I think it is a big deal is because when we talked about Berlin, the very first, and when we did our little like mood board, Berlin Marathon, what do you imagine? Speed, fast, performance, times, world records, and world records create superstars. And perhaps it's a chicken and egg thing. Perhaps it's like, hey, listen, if Katema would have won in 210 somehow, then we wouldn't even be talking about this, because it'd be like, we've got our next great one here. We've got our next great superstar. So two birds, one stone scenario. But I think about a race like Chicago. Now, Chicago right now has got the men's world record, right? So it's sort of seen as this lightning fast course with this absolutely incredible performance last year that it can kind of mold or shape its identity around at the moment. But Chicago for a lot of years was kind of slipping into being like a B team type race, I think, apart from being a marathon major, because it never had any real like standout performances. And Berlin had all the world records. And there was even a lot of discussion of like, how much faster is Berlin than Chicago? And this trickles down to recreational runners as well. And they're like, what's the fastest course to run where I can run my PR, PB, or whatever you want to call it. And I think that's a big deal. And so I think that like, maybe again, hindsight is 2020 here. If we get a couple of years in the future and Alex is going to be like, see, it's just post-Olympic year, Berlin is always going to take a hit because it's the September race right after the Olympic marathon. No big deal. We had a world record in 2020 and 2025. Everyone's good, right? But I think for now, it's a big deal. I think it is. Okay. So let's go into, this is a perfect pivot here. Let's go into our 5 burning questions that will be left mulling over for days and weeks about this Berlin Marathon as we go into the rest of the World Marathon Majors schedule here. And this, it kind of teases at what I was just talking about here. And I'll pose this to you first, Katelyn.
Okay.
How big a draw is Berlin for the average recreational runner if it can't produce really fast times at the front?
Yeah. We're gonna talk about this a little later about where it is in our list again of the majors. As someone who's just starting out, wanting to run all of the majors, I kind of felt, and you guys Michael can tell me a little bit more about this, but I felt that, people want to go there and they want to run a really fast time. But my question to you is it possible with the crowds that I saw when you're in those corrals? That's my big question. Like, yes, I would love to go there and run a really flat race and see what I can do in a flat race, because all the marathons, well, I've not run that many. They've been like pretty hilly. And so I don't really know how I would perform on a super flat course. And so I would love to go to a flat course and give it a try and see how I do without so many hills. But I saw the crowds in there. And guys, does it really make that much of a difference? Does it really slow you down a ton or not really?
So this has been a point of discussion. I'm running Chicago in a couple short weeks.
Yay.
And even at the very front of the race, so you're in the first corral, the first wave, corral A, I guess it's called, wave 1,
okay.
Which is where I'll be at, which is neat, right behind the elite runners. But it's still me and several thousand of my closest running friends starting in that first corral, first wave. And you get out to a fast start and everyone's super excited and running probably way faster than they should be in the first mile or so. but it's still super clogged. And this is with a really wide boulevard, right? We're not talking tiny European streets. We're talking, you know, Chicago, Michigan Avenue, I think is the starting boulevard or avenue, I guess. And it's really congested. And like the first 5K is actually quite chaotic and quite stressful. And you kind of have to let go and just chill and keep the heart rate down and not freak out, stay poised and accept the fact that like your first 5K split's going to be anywhere from like slightly too fast because you got pulled through with this giant group of people and didn't want to get trampled, or kind of on the slow side because you got stuck in a log jam behind a whole bunch of people. So in that regard, I think some of these quote unquote super duper fast world marathon majors are fast because the course is flat and it's extremely well organized. But they're going to feel chaotic at times. So, kind of been dancing around like that. Is this performance of this edition of the race going to affect your decision or the draw of the average person? Which, like, you know, Katelyn, you and I are average. We're average people, and maybe Alex is a little speedier. But Alex, what's your take on this?
As an above average person, Michael, I've considered this deeply. You know, no, I mean, and I mean this to no disrespect to anybody, but would the average runner care if the top time is a 2:03 and not a 2:02, or a 2:16 and not a 2:14?
I was getting to that. I don't think so. I mean, do you think so?
I don't think so over 1 year, but I would think so over 10 years. If like for whatever reason the next 10 years Berlin produces kind of like soft elite results and nothing close to world records, and then say Chicago is just because it's drawing the better athletes or luck or what better race days weather-wise or whatever, produces like the next 5 world records, the narrative will change, right? The narrative will turn to like, maybe Berlin's not as fast as we thought.
It's not that fast.
You think so?
Chicago's faster. I think so. I think so.
But I think we need more of these years. I think we need like 5 or 6 years stacked one after the other of quote unquote underwhelming top times. Like if no one comes close to the world records until 2029, 2030, I think that's what it takes to gain a reputation. I don't think Berlin loses its reputation as a fast marathon just after the 1 year.
Yeah, especially because it came after the London Marathon. I mean, I don't think we were expecting such fast times, but I mean, if next year they bounce back because of the Paris Olympics, I don't think that, you know, if they bounce back next year because we don't have the Olympics and then we get these super fast scorching times or a bigger world record again or something like that, I think, you know, but I don't know. To me, I guess that the top times were 2:03, you know, 2:03 something. And that's not going to affect me as a recreational runner, but that's maybe just because I'm not fast. So it still seems like so above and beyond and out of my league that I'm just so impressed by it anyway, that I don't think it would affect me, but maybe in the long run it would affect the marathon overall. But I don't know.
If we're all across the finish line of a marathon, Katelyn, and the race organizers say like, actually, that's not the finish. You got to go out and do another loop. Then you become fast. Okay. So next one, burning question. Are races without huge headliners fun to watch?
Less so. I get the appeal of like, hey, Tigges to Cefa are 2:11 runners not here. So now the race is up for grabs. I get that. But I still think it's less exciting. Like Michael, you said earlier, world records build superstars. I would alter that a little and say races with major headliners build superstars, because either the headliner wins and stacks his or her legacy, or someone beats the headliner. Someone becomes the Kipchoge Dragon Slayer or whatever.
I was waiting for that reference.
Right? And then, that's kind of, you know, and then I'm trying to think when Kipchoge kind of faltered in London a few years ago, the handful of gentlemen who beat him became the Kipchoge Slayers, just like that. That creates a legacy in itself, superstar. So without a major headliner, that whole dynamic is missing.
Yeah.
And so, no, I do get the fun of not knowing who's going to be on the podium, but I think the marathon is so precarious that even when there are big headliners, you still don't know if they're going to take the win.
I think I have a kind of a different take on it because it's not that I'm thinking if the headliner is going to take the win or not take the win. I think I just like watching a really good race. And I think that that can be applied to any kind of, like, I'm a huge sports fan. I love watching. I'll watch almost any sport. And if it's a good game, no matter who's in it, then I'll be excited about it. So I think that I liked watching the men's field today. The women's field, I just felt like amazingly impressed by obviously by the win. But the men's field, I like watching it because it's back and forth. We don't know who's going to win. The crowd was big for the first half. It was still big in the second half with 8 to 11 people. And then, you know, you had the 4 guys at the end, and we didn't know who was going to come in first, second, or third. And we got a surprise for third place. So I think it's not such a big deal to me because I just really like watching a good strategic marathon or, you know, a great football game or whatever it's going to be, as long as it's exciting and it's interesting.
Yeah, I think that it's important to have stars. And I think that this is a star-starved sport in a very precarious time, which we'll talk about with the last burning question I got for you guys a little bit more. And I think that it turns into like you said, Katelyn, it kind of turns into an entertainment for the real ones of us, the ones who like will watch anything, the diehards, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, I'm interested in who these people are. I want to know more about them.
Yep.
I am a student of the sport. I kind of want to study up on some of these up and comers so that I'm familiar with their names in the future, because these could be the next Kipchoge's. Tamarat Tola is a guy that we kind of tracked for the last few years, and now he's the Olympic champion and kind of a big deal. But I would say that what's lacking right now in the world of particularly marathon fandom, but athletics fandom, is if I use like the NFL equivalent, because the NFL is this like dominant sports entertainment product. There are people who will watch the 4 p.m. game on Sunday when it's the New York Giants against the Carolina Panthers. They're just like two shit teams. And you're just like, but there's like a 4-hour block in your afternoon and you're there to consume football entertainment, right? That's what you signed up for. I'm not saying that the World Marathon Majors are ever going to get to that, but you've got to build up one heck of a product to have that draw where people are just like, I just want to watch.
I'll just watch it.
I just want to watch a marathon. I want to live stream Berlin and just take it all in, regardless of what happens. So got a ways to go before we get there, if we ever do. But okay, so next burning question. Did this race alter your personal power rankings of the World Marathon Majors? We talked about this in our preview pod for Berlin, where we slotted Berlin as a race that we wanted to run and a race we want to pay attention to as well, because they're sort of two different things at the same time. Alex, did Berlin move up or down your power rankings in terms of, like, let's just say a race you want to run, or did it just stay the same?
It stayed the same for me. Okay, back to that question of, does that affect our own desire to run it? Just the fact that it was a bit slower. Personally, it doesn't affect. Same thing. I'm not going to be up there. I'm not going to be up there with these guys. And so
you'll be close. You could do it for a mile.
Well, close is relative.
You'd be that guy who runs at the lead for a mile.
Yeah, who wants to be in the picture? Who wants to just show up in the stream?
Why don't you be that guy? Yeah.
That might be kind of cool. Yeah. Waste my trip to Berlin. Make a good YouTube video. No, it doesn't change it for that reason. The only thing that it alters in my mind is that I think I'm going to be a little bit less excited about watching Berlin on Olympic years, because I think there is a bit of a trend there. And so I might expect it to be a little bit weaker every 4 years. But in the grand scheme of things, that makes no real difference. So no, this doesn't hurt its legacy for me. I still want to run it one day, and I'll watch it intently next year when someone goes 2:01 and 2:11 again.
This is a dark thought, but think about how many Olympics you've got left in your life to watch. And then that is how many Berlins you have to not worry about. Whew.
Michael. That's not
Alex
nice.
is like, I've got like
I can't even count. There are so many.
like 20. Kayla and I like we've each got 4
like,
left.
I just felt sad for a second.
Yeah. It's a sort of existential cloud of darkness here.
Thanks, Michael. Great way to start a Sunday morning.
Sorry. So yeah, Katelyn, did it move the power rankings at all for you, or are you locked in the same?
I wish I could give you a really good reason, but it did. It went down a spot, and I plopped,
really?
I plopped New York up another spot. I went, yeah, I don't know. I just felt like I wasn't as excited. But you know what? Now when I watch New York, I'm gonna have like a better idea. It was more on your comments about New York, and you kind of got me jazzed about thinking about running New York and that marathon, and then watching Berlin. I didn't feel quite the same excitement for it. So we'll see when I see New York. But now I've got Boston, London, New York instead of Boston, London, Berlin. So we'll see what happens.
I'm sort of locked in. I'm locked in the same spot I was before. I would still say that Berlin is sort of Berlin as a city overall, as a cultural epicenter of Europe, is intriguing to me for a lot of reasons beyond the marathon. I'm interested in the art and culture and music of Berlin. I got a couple of friends that live there. I'm interested in the history of it. I'm interested in the whole Cold War history of it as well. So, and it's a fast course. So like, hey, I'll take a fast course run. But at the same time, in terms of like ranking my interest in the marathon itself, I still think New York is the best, and I want to go back and do it again. Although I've got London in there now too. And so Berlin is sort of falling into the exact same spot. This did not move the needle one way or another for me. All right. Another burning question here. Are any of the top Olympians that ran in the marathon, or even people who like struggled in the marathon in the Olympics in Paris this year, did any of them watch the flow track live stream from the comfort of their training confines or maybe their off-season home and think to themselves, shit, I should have showed up at the start line. I could run a 2:03 or a 2:16 right now, or I could have like made the podium or given it a go. Like that would have been fun. I could have won a world marathon major. What was I doing? Alex?
One name comes to mind. Okay. I wish Tigist Isefa would have run this. This is asking a lot of her because it's not like she bombed Paris. She was second in Paris. And before that, she ran London. So she's already had a chock full year of marathoning. 2 marathons a year is plenty. But to do the 3-peat in Berlin, I think would have been legendary. It would have added some flavor to the start list. It would have given a training partner to Kitema, maybe propelling her to even a faster time. I think it really would have benefited the race if she were there. If you're listening, Tigist Isefa, come on. Stop slacking off. You should have done Berlin. No, I think that's the only name. I mean, I think of others, especially on the women's side, like most of the top athletes have had a year. Isefa is one of them. I'm obviously just joking about her. Sifan Hassan had a massive year just in that Olympic week alone. She ran something like 60-something K of racing. Yeah. So not her again.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Then you have Helen Obiri, Sharon Lokedi. These are athletes we've seen so much. And so I'm not reproaching any of these people for not doing Berlin. It's just people are cooked now. I don't know. So no, like I don't think anyone, at least on the women's side, was sitting on the couch thinking, I should have been there. Maybe on the men's side, Cisse Lema. Okay.
Yeah.
Good call.
Good call. Yeah. Really good call.
Pulled out of the Olympics, injured, was obviously in terrific form this year, won the Boston Marathon. Maybe he's still injured. I don't know what his situation is. I'm guessing maybe that's the case because it would have been good to see him repeat because obviously he's in great form. So yeah, I'm giving it to Lema.
That's great. Yeah, no, that's a good one. I would have also loved to see Isefa run, but I mean, I'm not going to lie. I think that there were probably a bunch of people on the couch thinking, yeah, I could have won that race, but should they have? No, Alex is the first thing we're going to agree on today. I completely agree with Alex. And I think that they should have and probably did listen to their coaches, even if they got excited or wanted to, because it was probably just too big of a risk. I mean, like Alex said, they're just totally burnt out. Why risk an injury if you can start the next season super strong or even wait a few months to run another marathon later in the season? So Alex, we agreed on one thing today.
I'm just looking here. I'm seeing that I think the strategic move has been, and we're gonna cover New York in great detail down the line in November. But there's a whole bunch of Olympians that are popping up in New York City to run New York. And that makes sense because there's a little bit of a break, right? Whereas obviously Berlin is really up against Paris. But the Cisse Lemma poll, that's a good one.
Yeah,
that's a really good one. Yeah. All right. Last burning question. We wouldn't get out of this pod without talking about the Kipper. Should Eliud Kipchoge have run this race? And what is his future? Crystal ball time, Alex. Look in
Go,
there.
Alex.
Stop trying to make Kipchoge happen. It's not happening anymore.
Make Kipchoge great again.
Make Kipchoge. Yeah, I think this race was actually a bit of a minefield for Kipchoge had he entered. The field was too weak for it to be acceptable that he would lose. If Kipchoge entered,
okay.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
if Kipchoge entered this race, he would have had to win. I think mentally that's a bad situation, even for a philosopher king like Kipchoge, right? There's nothing to beat. It's not like you're racing Tamirat Tola, for example, the reigning Olympic champion, whereas like if you lose, yeah, even if you're Kipchoge, you're losing against the Olympic champion. Here, it was either you win and you did what you're supposed to do, or you lose and you've underperformed. I don't think this was the race for Kipchoge to come back and win, unless he was in world record form, which I suspect he's not. So I don't think this was the time. Maybe he makes a run for it next spring. Maybe we see him again. You can't bet against greatness after all. But this wasn't Kipchoge's week.
Yeah, I think selfishly, everyone or a lot of people would have loved to just see him there and make this comeback after what happened at the Olympics. I think we would have loved to see it. But like Alex said, can you imagine the pressure and the stress that he would have, probably not going into that race with what happened at the Olympics, probably not going into that race with his head right, even if he is 100% fit and at his fittest, which we're also wondering about. So I agree that perhaps I would have loved to see him there, but only if he were able to make that comeback, only if he were able to win and we were able to see Kipchoge at maybe not his best ever, but his best, win the marathon, kind of get that confidence back. And, the crowd loves him. So it would have been nice, but maybe it was just a bit too soon.
Yeah, I'm reassessing my take on this in real time as you guys are talking or convincing me of this. I was initially thinking to myself, this is a great opportunity for him to come in, have the Berlin Marathon organizer set the table for him and have him have success, pump out one world marathon major win, one more world marathon major win, kind of pad the stats, do the LeBron approach to the claim of GOAT status, where it's just it's about length and breadth of career and success, not about the highs being the highest highs. Although I would say that if we're going to do an NBA comp, it feels like Kipchoge is both Jordan and LeBron at the same time somehow. So it's he's good. But you're right, Alex. This, unless they were going to clear the decks for him and sub out all of these guys who are able to kind of float in around 203 for the win and bring in a bunch of real B squad scrub guys that he was comfortable taking down. And then that would have felt kind of a bit like a staged race, right? Like a fake race. So yeah, it's lose, unless he would have somehow could have said with 100% confidence, I can smash this thing. Right. Kind of reminds me similar to the scenario in Tokyo that he found himself in earlier this year, where he came in as the clear favorite. It sort of felt like a fait accompli, that he was going to just float through Tokyo because he'd had success there before. This was going to be yet another world marathon major to add to his legacy. And, the big question was going to be, does he still have it? Does he still have the speed to run close to a world record or a 202 or something like that? And with this race, there was a large group of people in the first half. They were splitting around 201 high pace, so very fast. And in Tokyo in March, Kipchoge struggled mightily with that and then faded back quite badly and ran until Paris, probably arguably the worst race he's ever run before. So yeah, maybe this would have been a disaster for him and further hurt his legacy. I think the big question mark is now, like, what does he do next? What does he do in 2025? Like, what's the next phase of his career? There needs to be planning here. You know, he's a franchise. He's not just a runner. He is a brand. So how does Nike handle this? How does his agent handle this? He built the NN running team, right? Which is now developed into this pretty big group with a pretty big footprint globally as an elite team. He was the figurehead of that for a long time. So there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of questions to be answered with Eliud Kipchoge. Okay. And 2025, I think, will be a big year. Does he start just doing like the victory tour where he's just showing up at every World Marathon Major and he's doing like the MEB thing where he's just like, I'm going to pace the sub 3 group out and, you know, I'm sponsored by Abbott, you know, and he's like handing people all weekend at the expo and doing talks and doing lots of like media hits and that sort of thing. Is that what 2025 and beyond is going to be for him? Or is he going to like try to run New York in 2025 because he's never run New York and he's tried to like do all the majors? Like what happens with him? I don't know. Does Nike come out with like a not so fast super shoe called the Kipchoge? I don't know. That's maybe a mean dig there, but okay. Speaking of digs, last component of this pod, and then we're out. Then we move on from Berlin and on to Chicago. Katelyn, one winner, one loser.
Oh, I hate doing the loser thing. Okay.
Again, it's not the person's a loser.
I know.
It's someone who has something to gain and they lost.
No, and mine is going to be, well, you guys will see the pattern. Okay. So my winner was the second place on the women's side, right? Fakir, because she joined the sub 220 club. She beat her PR by 2 minutes from April. So I think that she was a winner because she's got to be super happy with herself for just killing her PR by so much. So I was really happy about that. And the loser, guys, this is absolutely a pattern. I got up at 3 a.m. to watch the marathon. So I could, I could watch it because I have to watch the whole thing. I like to watch every second of it. What happens? I don't want to miss an elbow, or I don't want to miss not being able to get the bottle and the shove that we saw today. I don't want to miss anything. So I want to watch the whole thing. If you go to like the broadcast lists, Central America was not even like taken into consideration on much of where we would watch the marathon. It was like South America, then you saw the United States, and you saw Canada. So I assumed, okay, what's probably going to be on those same avenues. So, Disney Plus, ESPN, literally 45 minutes trying to figure out how to watch the marathon. It shouldn't be that hard. Like it should be readily available to get paid for and watch. And it was so difficult. It literally took me this whole time. So I'm going to say again, guys, come on. We really want to watch the marathon. If you come to Costa Rica, you have thousands of runners out on the weekends. Well, I know thousands doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're in a very small country, it is. You can't even get through the center of my town because of the amount of people running their long runs on the weekends. Like marathoning is huge here. We always have a ton of Costa Ricans in Berlin. Just make it a little easier for us to be able to pay for and watch the marathon. It was just very frustrating. And so I was watching it like up to the last minute of the podcast. So I guess the loser for me was, please just make it a little easier for us to be able to watch. Let me be able to click on something and watch it. That's all. That's all I ask.
By South America, they meant Texas.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm like, what? Like, what do you mean? And we're here, guys. Come on, throw me a bone. How can I watch the marathon? So maybe there was an easier way, but let me tell you, I had 3 people on it, 2 that are very techie, and I am not. So I asked for help, and we just couldn't get it. So it took a while.
Yeah, the Marathon Handbook Slack lights up at like 3:30 in the morning Eastern time with like Katelyn being like, guys, how do I watch this? How do I get in? How do I watch Flow Track?
Yeah, come on, guys, help me.
I know. It's like a World Marathon Major, guys. Figure this out.
It's a big deal. It was a big deal. Yeah. So anyway, that was the biggest loser for me.
Alex?
Okay, so Biggest winner, I was going to go with Ethiopia, but because they had 13 of the top 20 finishers, top 10 men, top 10 women, but we've talked about this. So I'm going to go all WTF on you guys. My winner is Kibiwot Candy.
What?
Yeah. For context, I don't think we've talked about him. Kibiwot Candy was one of the favorites of the race who we saw for the first half, and then shortly after he crashed and burned and finished nowhere near the lead. I'm not even sure if he finished at all. We're going to have to go through the results.
He was 13.
Yeah, somewhere
13.
around there.
There we go.
206 he finished in. He was all over the place in this race.
Yeah.
This is why I'm giving him the winner title. Okay, to set the stage. This men's race at one point seemed like it would actually fill that gap of like, is someone going to go 201 in Berlin this year? At the halfway mark, they were at 60:57. So just about 202 pace. They were slightly getting slower between 10K and half. Shortly after that, Kibiwot Candy takes the lead and drops a 2:47 kilometer.
Yes, he did.
Basically,
why not?
Why not? But why would he do that? I think he knew what was at stake. He said, there's a podium to win here. There's a legacy to upkeep. There's a chance for me to take center stage and make this race exciting and also take what's mine and become the next one. And I think we need to reward those balls. He gets the Big Balls Award. And on another day, I mean, listen, he's a 57:32 half marathoner. It's not like he's a nobody. On another day, he had it in the tank. He would go 2:01:45 and boom, there you go. Sounds a bit silly because he didn't do that, but I want to look out for him in the next few races. If someone was going to make this men's race memorable, it was Kibiwot Candy, and I want to reward him for that. And I mean, I could just go with the men's winner, but that's a bit too obvious. So, Big Balls Award, Kibiwot Candy.
All right.
The loser, I thought about this. This is a boring one. I give it to the Berlin Marathon. Maybe they could have done more to attract a big star. Their legacy, as we've said in a previous pod and again today, is speed. And if they can figure out how to make the Olympic year race fast, I think that's how they win. They didn't do that in 2021. They didn't do that this year. I feel silly because I'm harping on 203 men for about 45 minutes. I'm about to go do my long run at no pace near that close. But listen, that's pro sports. That's how it is. And this race is not going to be that remembered. So I got to give Berlin Marathon the loss here.
You gave a 13th place finisher who did not deliver on his promise the win in the Berlin Marathon in its 50th anniversary with 50,000 runners, World Marathon Major. The loss. Let's give this guy the Big Balls Award. That is hot take potting right there. I like it.
Come at me, Berlin.
Yeah. No, poor Kibiwot Candy. I feel like I think this is his third marathon. Super talented guy. I kind of feel like Berlin was like the organizers were probably hoping in the back of their minds, like this is going to be the big breakout race for him. We're going to get like a 2:01 performance, one of the fastest ever from somebody that wasn't even given any consideration for the Olympics. This is going to be amazing. And that just kind of didn't happen. But Alex, I just gave you shit for that, but I'll go losers and winners first. Cause loser, I agree with you, Berlin. I also agree. And the reason why is because I feel like even though it was the 50th anniversary, even though there's 50,000 people running it, even though clearly interest is at an all-time high to actually run this race, I feel like it was kind of a featureless, characterless race to a certain degree as well. And I think that Berlin has, for better or for worse, tied itself to elite running and record-breaking performances, and the fact that the identity of this race is a fast course for so long that now that we don't have that for a year, it's like, whoa, there's a real vacuum. So I think it's an interesting challenge for them in the future and for all these other races to kind of figure out what their identities are and also figure out how we attract the best runners and create these exciting match races that also produce world records at the same time. I think that's the goal in 2025 and beyond. Let's go sub 2 Berlin. Like breaking 2, sub 2. I don't know. Does Nike own the breaking 2? They probably do own that as a trademark or as a copyright or whatever. So sub 2 in Berlin. Let's go sub 2 2025 for Berlin. My winner This is a weird one I'm going to pull out of nowhere here. I just noticed her in the results, and I'm like, oh, yeah. It's kind of a weird one, but 15th place from Team GB, or not Team GB, because she did not make the Olympics, Philly Bowden. Okay, so if you watch a lot of influencers and YouTubers on Instagram and YouTube, of course, in the running space, you probably have encountered Philly Bowden at some point. She's got a pretty popular YouTube channel. She's gone through a lot of ups and downs the last couple of years. She was a New Balance athlete, tried to qualify for the Olympics. We talked a little bit about her around the Houston Marathon, because she was one of those many athletes that went to Houston in January to try to qualify for the games. She ran, I think, 2:29 and just missed. 2:28, I believe, was the 2:28 the qualifying time, or was it 2:28? And so she just missed qualifying for the Olympic team for Great Britain. She got dropped by New Balance, and then she was like kind of blowing in the wind for a bit. Her YouTube channel kind of got a little bit sad, because she's like, I'm now going to be a YouTuber full time. Follow my journey. I don't know what's next. And then I think On picked her up recently. I mean, she's got a pretty big following, so it makes sense, like from a business standpoint. Anyway, bearing the lead here, Philly Bowden went to Berlin, ran 2:25:47. Huge PB for her.
Mm-hmm.
Good for her.
Awesome.
Congratulations. Yep. I mean,
Yeah.
A bit bittersweet, I imagine. I imagine it's a scenario where she's just like, well, shit, I would have liked to have done that in the springtime and ran the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting question mark, and sort of a sliding doors moment to make reference to a great Gwyneth Paltrow film of the 1990s. If she would have ran that sub 2:28 in the springtime or in January last year and made the Olympics, she wouldn't have run Berlin and run a 2:25 and had a big breakout right now, which I'm sure maybe comes with I hope for her case, comes with some bonus money from On and new opportunities for her, and maybe world championships next year in Tokyo, and that sort of thing. And being all of a sudden one of the top UK runners in the marathon. So maybe this is a blessing in disguise, not making the Olympics for her.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully she sees it that way. I know she's a person who puts herself out there. And I think, question marks about when you really put yourself out there in a diaristic kind of way on YouTube, it can cut both ways for you, but kudos to her for running 2:25. So
Awesome.
She is definitely my singular big winner of the day. Besides, of course, the winners of the race, and to a degree, the 50,000 people who ran Berlin and the Berlin Marathon for celebrating its 50th anniversary. Guys, we did it. Instant reaction pod. Yeah, that was something like 20 minutes. Well, anyway,
Sure.
There was a lot to
that.
talk about.
Yeah.
There was a lot to talk about. Okay,
listen to it on 1.5, and that's about
there you go.
Yeah, listen to it fast. There you go.
Now we got to all peel out and run our long runs on this Sunday morning. Super jazzed after watching an exciting World Marathon Major. We'll do this again for Chicago. I will be podding live on location and doing an instant reaction pod with you guys after Chicago, still in my singlet.
Oh.
Let's
Watch
get that on
one.
video.
Watch out for that one. All right, gang. Make sure to subscribe to our newsletter, which goes out every weekday. 150,000+ other people do. So why shouldn't you? And give us a like and a review, a rating and a review on the podcast platform you're listening to right now. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.